All right,
Exactly.
ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 13 of the Healthcare Growth Cycle podcast featuring Andrew Bravo, founder and CEO of GGB Healthcare. And the cool overlap with this is that he's in home care, and I've already done quite a few durable medical equipment and home medical equipment guests on the show. So to have Andrew's expertise on strictly the home care side of the house as opposed to durable medical equipment, there's definitely some overlap there. And I think the conversation is going to be really, really interesting to kind of parallel and compare and contrast similarities and differences between how we're helping the home health sector of healthcare just in some different ways. So Andrew, pleasure to have you on the show, man. And yeah, really excited to have you here.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to glad we could do this.
Yeah. So I guess just starting out, if you want to give some background on, starting with academics and then what led into your experience in healthcare all the way to home care and founding GGB Healthcare, I think that'd be really, really useful for the listeners.
Absolutely. And it's really a full circle story with some consistent threads, but callbacks towards the beginning. So from an education perspective, I studied chemistry and economics in undergrad and always knew I wanted to go into healthcare. Healthcare in many ways is a family business in my family. Thought about going to medical school, took the MCAT, but then decided not to when I didn't want to inconvenience any professors for a long path I was not myself going to go down. Where that, started out my career in consulting, so focused primarily on healthcare and private equity clients. So during my time in consulting, spent time working with Fortune 500 companies in the payer space, pharma, med tech, academic medical centers, and then a lot of private equity. This is now, to date myself, almost 12 years ago, but private equity has become so much more active in healthcare during that time that you get to see a lot of sub-segments throughout the healthcare space that they're looking into. So during that process, did some time in consulting, went to business school, got my MBA in healthcare management at the Wharton School. And through that process, knew that I didn't want to be a full-time career consultant, but started to pivot into more, I'd say, tech-focused and entrepreneurial-focused areas. So had some different points in time where I worked in investing roles, worked for a little while longer in consulting before starting my first company, which was a healthcare AI company, but for the whole healthcare sector. During that time, what eventually brings me to GGB is during that time, my largest clients ended up being in the home care space, and there just became a real realization that the home care space within healthcare was uniquely ready to take advantage of some of these advances in AI. And it's been a sector since then, since starting GGB 9 months ago, there's so much demand for these solutions.
Yeah, no, that's great. What kind of solutions, I guess, were you originally implementing in the broader healthcare space? Like, because of your background in consulting, I'm just curious to touch on that, and maybe what was one of the key realizations that you wanted to completely niche into home care? Because I think, so for me as a consultant, I'll just speak I'm healthcare, I've got to play in health tech, DME. I mean, there's a few different areas that I could ultimately go down. I don't think I'm quite there to say I'm just going to be home care or I'm just going to be telehealth. So I guess what was one of the shining stars as to what caused you to say home care is it? Let's do this.
Yeah, I think home care is uniquely primed for a few reasons. If you look at the end market within home care, we have such a large number of aging seniors in our population. There's just going to be such tremendous demand, and the current infrastructure will break if we don't find a better way to operate the way we've been doing things and also find new ways of operating in the future. You hear statistics, 10,000 people turn 65 every day. In 5 years, there will be more people over 65 than under 18. There are all these statistics, but it really starts to hit home when you realize most of these home care agencies, it's a very small, it's a long tail of agencies. There are 30,000 agencies. No single agency has more than 5% of nationwide market share. There are industry reasons why these agencies tend not to scale fully nationally. And that's all to say there are opportunities throughout all of healthcare. And I hope I'm glad you're approaching healthcare as a whole from the data solutions perspective. But home care was
Yeah.
really ready, and we can get into the specific pain points that home care agencies face, but a lot of them are very well addressed by AI.
Yeah, and I think I would like to get right into that. I guess what are some opportunities where you've used AI to help these home care agencies succeed, or maybe even better yet, just from the pragmatic practitioner in me, what what are some of those problems that you're helping alleviate with AI?
Home care agencies, what I have found, they all face a very consistent set of problems, but they experience each problem very differently. And each different agency has a different problem as their number one problem. Some of those challenges, when you think about home care as an overall industry, one that always comes to mind is scheduling. And when you schedule a home care or home health appointment, it's not it's different from just going into a doctor's office and slotting the right person into the right time. It's almost like scheduling an Uber to go to someone's house or dispatching a package to be delivered. You can think of it as there are many variables on either side, which is a problem that is well suited to AI, where you need to have a caregiver who is going into a patient's home, and they need to be geographically close enough so that they're not driving across town all day just to do one appointment. Similarly, you'll have all these constraints within scheduling where a female patient may want a female caregiver. A certain caregiver may be afraid of dogs. There needs to be a caregiver needs to have a certain certification or training level in terms of dealing with a patient who has dementia or a certain mobility consideration. There are payer considerations. Home care, in particular, has a large private pay market in addition to Medicaid. So really, two different ends of the spectrum. They're almost two separate businesses in how you run those operations. All to say, AI is very good at solving those constraints problems, and that's just one of the many problems. I'll pause here to go into scheduling, but I can get into some of the other
Yeah.
problems that they face as well.
Let's go more into scheduling, and I would be curious to first just to ask, maybe this is getting too into the weeds, but how do these home care agencies typically schedule? What's the tool that they use? Like, what are you connecting to as far as the actual AI agentic systems that you're building them on?
In the status quo, the scheduling happens in many ways, none of which is optimal in the current state. There's a combination of the agencies will be working in the existing EHR or system of record. The scheduling functionality in those tools has traditionally not been flexible or fast enough, or before AI was on the scene, they were not built to handle AI tools. I think for some EHR companies, that's changing a little bit, but inconsistent across the entire spectrum. The other tools, it is very much like many industries, it operates with Excel spreadsheets on the side, pencils and paper, Post-it notes, and that actually works pretty well up to a certain scale. Home care agencies are in the beneficial position of seeing such a tremendous upswell of demand where for them to see all of the patients who need to be seen, they are just not going to be able to grow their business. So unfortunate from a financial perspective, but also these patients just will not be able to receive the care that they need. So as a result, the tools that I typically use will be you're the data expert here, but a lot of it is a more robust data platform or warehouse to actually hold the data that's important for scheduling. This typically comes from the EHR and would include things like caregiver availability slots, patient characteristics, those variables that we talked about in the matching process previously. You need a good data hygiene and infrastructure in order to put the AI in a position to succeed, to do the solving those constraints, finding the ideal caregiver or provider for that patient's visit.
Do you ever find that the EHRs that you're working with have out of the box reporting that's sufficient for some of the needs of scheduling? Like, I mean, like that. I guess that would be because my question to you, like before we did this podcast, was let's get into, and now we're getting into it. When is a data warehouse justified? And for me, it's always been when there's more than one source system. And so if they're just using an EHR, it's like, how can you maximize that tool for scheduling and matching as opposed to having to go and build this big, robust, fancy data infrastructure? But the way I've been exposed to cough, DME EHRs, specific, I'm not going to name any names, but the reporting's really limited. And so the ability to have, slicing and dicing the way that you need it within a BI tool is a lot more useful for more advanced reporting use cases. Is that what you find? justifies a data warehouse as well is when the EHR is limited, or is it something else?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of those. I would say that the best time for an agency to start thinking about when they need a data warehouse is when they're at the point of growing and scaling quickly and certain processes are breaking, whether that's the scheduling processes or some reporting processes. Where I find this to be very common, private equity is a very active investor in the home care space, doing aggregations and roll ups for platforms and start with a few agencies in one part of the country, expand within that region, expand across states. As that happens and the processes become more more codified in terms of what reporting needs to happen, that process ends up breaking if you just rely on the inbuilt functionality with EHRs. And this is all to say, I think there are some excellent EHR companies out there and really good teams working on this. It's just, especially for the systems that were developed a long time ago, they weren't built to handle what AI can do. A lot of the reporting requests that come from agencies are very creative. They reflect that individual office's unique ways of operating. And the standard built in reporting does not always reflect the metrics that you'd want to see, is not always set up across new offices, new regions, and instances of that same software. It's often very difficult to get the right reporting. And you'll see in the status
Sure.
quo, it would be one business analyst job who's capable of doing so much more. They spend the majority of their time trying to gather all the data together before you can even analyze and do insights. And if instead that person could spend their time drawing conclusions from the data and then taking action on that data,
Yeah.
that is what really allows the business to grow and get to that next level.
Yeah. So do you help them just from a plug to GGB, do you help home care companies with the data management governance aspect, building out data dictionaries, defining metrics, defining fields within different tables that you're building within a data warehouse? Is that something that you guys specialize in?
I would say it's something we work on, and when we get a robust project, we'll get Steiner Analytics in there as a tag team.
You knew
You
where
would
I
be the
was
real
headed with
expert.
that. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but what I would say is we know, and we have done projects of that very high acuity of put in your
Sure.
first Microsoft Azure warehouse for the first time, and I can actually think back to individual projects that consisted of both an AI component as well as a data warehouse component, and we were told by leadership, both of these are great, but actually the data warehouse, even if we did nothing with AI, would have been the most important part of that project. I would say for GGB in particular, we really like to take the approach of, we work with some of the largest, fastest growing agencies in the country, especially those that are private equity backed. We also work with individual offices that are family owned or part of franchises. So we have a starting point and I'd say a catalog of options that can meet every agency where they are, no matter how large, no matter how small, no matter whether you take primarily private pay patients or Medicaid. We help with all the above. And as a result, the solutions that we end up recommending are all dependent on that agency's starting point, which of the pain points we've talked about scheduling so far, but there are probably 5 or 6 other pain points. What's
Yeah.
most
Well,
important to them?
yeah, I mean, let's get into billing. Like, what are some interesting pieces? And this kind of ties more into. I can't talk too much about it, but I have another client where we're going to be getting into a huge billing project, and it's in telehealth, so it's a little bit different. But I'd be curious to hear some challenges because I'm sure there's some overlap in home care to telehealth with billing.
There is a lot. The within home care and home health, maybe just to define those service lines of where we
Sure.
typically operate. When I say home care, that typically falls under what I would call non-medical care. This is helping people who are in the home, typically seniors, with activities of daily living such as meal prep, bathing, even companionship to keep people company. Then when you would get to home health, that ends up being more medical activities in nature. Think wound care, medication, things of that nature, and then hospice, which is more end of life. And where we focus is primarily in the home. There are other parts of senior care that could extend to assisted living facilities, skilled nursing, things of that nature. As a result, within those service lines, billing is often a challenge for a few reasons, some of which are unique to home care, some of which you can draw lessons from the broader healthcare provider space. What's unique about home care is we had discussed the different payers that pay for these sources. So private pay Medicaid, or excuse me, private pay home care, that is, it's the closest to a cash pay system. Sometimes you'll have some long-term care insurance. That's actually quite different from conventional healthcare billing with
Yeah.
revenue cycle management.
Yeah.
So your goals there, there are fewer payer requirements because a family's paying you and you're rendering care, but your considerations are making sure that if families are being reimbursed for that care, that they're receiving their reimbursement as quick as possible. It's almost like you are the payer in some extent, and you want to keep the amount of time a family has to essentially loan you money. You want to keep that as short as possible because you unlock the ability for seniors who are on a fixed income or families who are paying top dollar for this care. You're trying to make sure that they're receiving their reimbursements as quickly as possible. On the other end of the spectrum, when you are supporting patients whose home care is reimbursed by Medicaid, there are a wide range of compliance requirements for that, where billing ends up actually overlapping with compliance authorization in terms of the services that are allowed, the amount of services that are allowed, the start and end dates. There are appointments that are required for recertification purposes. All to say, the same business can be doing these two service lines. They are entirely different billing operations. And all of these pain points are connected together, where we know scheduling is impacted by billing because until you know what a patient is authorized for, you can't schedule the right number
Okay.
of visits. We'll get into compliance of hiring the right people and recruiting. That is all
Yeah.
tied as well. So these are all interrelated problems,
Well,
and unique to home
if it's
care.
private pay, maybe some rudimentary questions, but I mean, do you have to run? So if it's the family paying on behalf of a family member, is that did I hear that right? Is that correct?
Private pay could consist of the senior paying themselves out of their savings, or a family paying for an
Or a family?
elderly
Okay,
family
so
member. But I
okay,
would say when I call private pay, a health insurance company is typically not involved in that. The only
right.
exception, these lines will get blurry. Sometimes people have long-term care insurance, which would pay for a certain amount of care, where these are policies that people often purchase when they are in their working years that extend to
Okay,
later in life. Great policies to have. So I've seen a
yeah,
lot of clients that's a call out to if you're in the age where you can purchase long-term care insurance, look into
yeah.
that, because that can really come in valuable 30 years down the line.
Wow. Is there a risk with private pay that people just don't pay, or is the service always only performed once the bill is paid?
I'd say there's always a risk. I found it is
Okay.
usually less common. There are contracts and processes in place where people are legally required to pay that the rules vary and the best practices vary from agency to agency, in
Yeah.
terms of, maybe think of it as analogous to a retainer with a lawyer, paying the first couple of weeks upfront just to get in that cadence. But when home care works well, both sides are, it has a really transformative impact on these people's lives. So they understand that while they will be paying for the service out of pocket, the quality of care they receive is often quite high and allows someone to stay in a home who otherwise would not be able to stay in their home at that age.
Yeah. So what are what's one solution that you've developed or seen before that where AI helps with this billing issue?
Yeah, there are a few that we have deployed live with agencies right now. I would say maybe two that I will get to is, one is a combination of scheduling and compliance and billing all in one, where for one of our agencies whose patients are covered by Medicaid, the state will send an authorization note to, say it's a social worker, a caseworker, sends the overview of the allotted services for a given person to this home care agency who's our client, and their job is to work based on that authorization to understand how many hours they eligible for, which appointments should we schedule, what should the recurring cadence of those schedules be, after a certain period of time, when do we need to put together that reauthorization schedule. Lots of problems. And where the AI works, and this is a bit of inside baseball, but your listeners will understand AI. The type of AI that we use comprises multiple types of AI that is not just what you would call LLM, or similar to what you would use in ChatGPT or Claude in the browser. We'll use AI to analyze the actual authorization forms that come in via PDF or a blurry photo. AI can read those
Yeah.
images and turn that into structured data very, very effectively, faster than a person, and also provide an auditing trail to speed up that process. The AI can also take in that data, and whether you want to call this AI or machine learning, in either case, it gets the job done. There's more of what you would call a constraints-based optimization of finding who the ideal caregiver is for that given client along those factors we discussed: allergies or fear of dogs, wanting a female caregiver, things of that nature, solving those constraints. And then agentic AI will actually take actions. So once the ideal schedule is calculated and developed, actually take actions and go into the EHR or the other system to automatically schedule that. And throughout this whole process, the way we're very strong believers in having AI automate individual tasks, not entire jobs or roles, because we think that a human should always be overseeing this process at every step of the way. There are steps that AI is not as good at a human at still to this day, and
Yeah.
it is preferable to have a human playing that role. For instance, anytime a home care agency needs to speak with a patient or speak with a caregiver about a difficult situation, technologically, you could have a chatbot have that conversation. Practically, ethically, I don't think that's the right decision. And we encourage agencies to think about their workflows and say, your office manager who knows that family, who knows that client very well at a personal level, they should use the outputs of the AI and oversee the schedule the AI comes up with. Make sure sanity check that schedule, make sure it makes sense. And then you can go ahead and communicate that schedule to the patient, to the caregiver, and just essentially speed up 8 or 9 of those 10 steps and go in and still have the human either at the beginning or the end or both of that process.
And I don't think that's ever gonna leave healthcare, especially. And I think there's other processes in other industries that you could say the same about. But just in particular, healthcare, when you're dealing with patients' lives, and I've talked about this with other telehealth founders, you're always gonna have a human in the loop. Even my current client base, telehealth, like one of them has, actual clinicians that oversee whatever the telehealth AI model is revealing about patient outcomes and progress reporting. Like they all are governed and guided by a clinician. So it's encouraging, that we're on the same page there, because I just don't think you could ever replace a human in the loop.
Exactly. And the way I
Yeah,
see it too, and I know we had discussed this previously, is if you look at, I know this to be true for home care, but also with your telehealth clients and other parts of the
sure.
healthcare sector, there's no shortage of work to be done. So just because the AI is taking care of some verbatim or predictable steps, that doesn't mean that, there isn't an additional piece of work that a human can do. Or a thoughtful manager of all these businesses can always think of all the things they would do if they had more staff, more people, more bandwidth. That's what the AI lets you unlock, either to have the AI do some additional tasks there or to repurpose your people. But I view very much AI as helping agencies and other healthcare providers do more with less, provide a much more personalized experience. That is, I'd say, probably the most advanced use of AI that is getting the best results out in the market.
Yeah. As far as compliance goes to HIPAA top of mind, right? Like we're working with all this proprietary PHI data. What are some guardrails that you implement or practice, on a daily basis to ensure that, data stays secured within, the different AI tools that you're using?
Yeah, there's a mix of the table stakes which bear repeating, but every credible company should be doing in terms of make sure that you are using HIPAA compliant architecture, getting your business associate agreements, BAAs with your different software providers, setting up logging and controls to make sure that the right only certain people have access to the sensitive healthcare data. Make sure that you're following those security best practices. I think to dig even more though a bit into what we had discussed in our last point is, everything there's table stakes, and everybody needs to be doing the technological side of
Yeah.
ethical AI adoption. I,
PHI AI governance
exactly.
almost. That's a mouthful. Yeah.
Yes, and
Yeah.
there's also a lot of operational and workflow elements to think about as well, where it's like we said, having the human in the loop for the right parts
Yeah.
of the process, always having a human review or sign off on AI generated output. Where a good analogy I like to use is AI is a reasonably smart but infinitely capable in many ways intern who's going to be working for the office managers or the scheduling managers, these home care agencies. You would always check in interns' work. So you can send them and they'll do a job for you very quickly, but building in that step in your workflow to confirm that the schedule makes sense, that the compliance form that the AI read that data accurately, adding in a check step to say, to confirm we actually do have this authorization, because these agencies and other healthcare providers, especially when you work with government payers, you can run into some issues if you actually don't have the proper compliance documents approved in your system. So just building in both for, I would say, compliance safeguards, but also just for error checking, always making sure a human's reviewing that output and signing off on it.
Yeah.
That's a critical piece as well.
Awesome. Yeah, no, thanks for covering that. And I think it's I don't know, I think it's just always good to refresh people on some of the fundamental, table stakes pieces. I don't yeah. It's just you could hear horror stories, right? Like there's lack of care with PHI data. I mean, I think, data breaches are becoming a more prominent thing, and it's something that keeps me up at night. So to just get your perspective on it and to touch on it and just to be, hey, this is, what we need to be thinking about and doing is just a good reminder for everyone in healthcare.
Yeah, absolutely. You want to move quickly, but you need to move thoughtfully, and you
Yeah,
can't break things in healthcare, even though you need to move quickly and transform how things are being done.
absolutely. So let's get into a little bit more of the leadership side of GGB and just business ownership, entrepreneurship. Um, how has that been? Is it just you? Do you have a team under you? Like what is that process like?
Yeah, I'm leading the majority of it, and as we go for builds, bringing in contractors to help as needed, fill out different builds as part of the process. I would say that what is great, and we talked about this before with your business as well, the starting a business in the last 6 to 12 months is a blessing in many ways, because there are so many ways you can be AI native and think from first principles about how you build a business, that you can rewrite the old rules of you need to hire a sales leader, you need to hire a large technical team to build things. You can actually do a lot more with less. It's helpful because I tell our clients the AI tools that I give you are going to help you do more with less. There's no better proof point than operating your own business, and in the business they call it dog fooding, of eating your own dog food, but
Yeah,
making sure that your tools are also enabling your productivity as well. So there's a lot there, and I think it really also enables a very tailored approach to each client that was never possible, because I started a company 3 years ago, and the levels of personalization that are possible now, and the higher
yeah,
productivity and understanding specifically what a customer needs in the tools that we build, you can build the last mile. I'd say that at GGB, most of our solutions, we have a catalog of tools that address the pain points across scheduling, billing, compliance, sales and marketing, recruiting. They're all the core bones of those from use case to use case are 70 to 80% consistent. But that last mile of 20 to 30%, AI makes it very feasible and desirable to customize that last mile to show, in the data world, a specific dashboard that no other agency has wanted, but is possible to put together. And then that dashboard becomes then available to other agencies who might need to operate in a similar way. There's
yeah.
just a very positive flywheel effect that's enabled by the times we live in.
Absolutely. Something I want to call out here to the listeners is Andrew's done a fantastic job at number one, niching into like hyper niche of an industry. So healthcare, home care. And then on top of that, you lead with the outcome, not with the tool. And I just say that because when I got into consulting, you know, I led with, oh, I'm a data engineer and now I'm a data engineer consultant. It's like, well, what does that really provide executives running a business? It's like you can spin it as, business decision making and whatnot, but they don't really care about the how. And so I just really appreciate the fact that you lead with the outcome. You understand home care operations. And that leads me to my next question. Who are the main stakeholders that you typically interface with and help lead decision making with? Is it operations directors? Do you work with the IT departments at all of these home care companies? Like, I'm just curious to learn a little bit more about that.
Yeah, definitely appreciate those kind words. And I would say that in the same way that we want to work with agencies of all sizes, that work brings us to different engagement models for different types of agencies. I would say that we will usually work from the leadership levels to the front line levels for the agencies we work with. That
Yeah.
works with our stakeholders, depending on the size of the agency, is often the owner, CEO, often COOs, and people who lead operations. We also work alongside IT, who are responsible for ensuring that the systems remain secure, compliant, and they really are the internal experts in how the status quo of an agency is going. We don't want to fight and rip and replace systems. That wastes everybody's time and causes frustration. Let's find ways that we can get quick wins in business results together by swimming with the current, only changing what we need, whether that's operations or technical as well. We also will work with managers of certain functions or departments. A number of my clients, I'll work with the head of scheduling, with the head of, for certain agencies who might do Medicaid, home care, private pay home care, the leader of those service lines, as well as the people who lead home health if it's under the same umbrella. Rare, but sometimes these agencies will have multiple service lines under the same company. And
Yeah.
then we also work with the frontline users very closely as well, where I have multiple Slack instances, Microsoft Teams channels, almost like an operational dashboard, so to speak, of my own for managing all these projects, where I'm speaking with the person who is using these tools at agency one on the West Coast, agency two's in the Midwest, agency three here in New York. And we're working with those frontline users because we've seen that to really drive true successful AI implementation and transformation that realizes the full potential of what these tools can do, there needs to be a very robust engagement at all levels of these organizations,
Yeah.
from the front line to leadership. And the organizational knowledge exists in different ways all up and down that chain, and your solutions will not be as effective as possible unless you incorporate all the above.
Yeah. Do you find it challenging navigating the dynamics internally at these companies between departments from operations to IT? If IT has a regulation about something and operations like, no, just get it done. Let's implement that. We need to move. I mean, just because I'm speaking from experience, and I think this is more to the enterprise level or like yeah, large enterprise level, that there's some dynamics at play there where IT might want things one way versus the speed that an operations department wants, that can create friction. So I'm just curious, as a consultant, have you encountered that, and how do you mediate that? Or is the way that you engage with these companies, you're not really favoring one side versus the other? Because I feel like data by itself is often traditionally an IT function. And so if you get lumped as a consultant under the IT function, it can make the overall engagement much more challenging from a business strategy perspective. So I'd just be curious to get your thoughts there on navigating those different dynamics politically.
I would say for GGB, I have been very fortunate to work with excellent clients. We truly love working with our clients. So we have not had turf war issues. People up and
Sure.
down the line are usually very
Amazing.
supportive of what we put together, which is great. I can't say enough nice things about our clients. I think a big part of that is in our I could tell stories about much larger organizations
Sure.
in conventional consulting. Then it becomes more complex when you have different parts of the world working
Yeah.
together, things like
Yeah.
that. But
Yep.
I would say for the agencies I've worked with, what's really useful is as much of the in-person direct shoulder to shoulder shadowing to understand not just how does a process work, what needs to be automated in this workflow, but seeing specifically how does that person work? Is it two screens? Is it one screen? Is it a horizontal monitor? Is it a vertical monitor? These are all very small details, but by succeeding on a thousand small things, that's where you get a tool that really drives adoption. I think another piece too is, and this is in many ways linked to home care as an industry, it is such a growing industry and the pie is growing for everybody that nobody is going to snap their fingers and lay off their entire staff and succeed as a business. What's most important with home care agencies is they have a machine that's going. You just need to keep that machine going better and faster. If all of a sudden
Wow.
you start ripping out people, pieces, you're disrupting a machine that is usually working pretty well. And the upside is minimal for that. What you really need to do is make the engine run faster, make sure that you get additional capabilities to make this part of your scheduling or other process faster. I would say that, and we do this intentionally. We also can afford to do this as an AI native company that is frankly not beholden to any interest that would force artificial growth just for the sake of top line growth. We can afford to spend more time with our clients than I would think is expected and is normal in almost any other consulting instance. And that is intentional by
Amazing.
design for our organization.
Yeah. Yeah. So everyone knows that the home care industry is growing. and your clients are all aligned across departments. So the need for growth and doing things the right way, everyone's not going to hold their own turf. So that, yeah, that's amazing. That's amazing. Um, so yeah, I guess so. We're kind of coming up. We're at 35 minutes right now, so let's try to keep this around 30 to 40 minutes for each episode. But what is a piece of advice on the founding aspect of a healthcare health tech consulting company? What's a piece of advice that you would give to someone just starting out, maybe in their first 3 to 6 months, just based on your experiences thus far as a business owner?
There are several, and you learn these lessons, and some of them you know before starting a company, but you still have to experience and learn them. So fortunately for GGB, this is my second time starting a company, and that gave some insights for how things are done, but presented its own learnings as well. I would say the first is to be laser focused on a specific type of customer and or problem that you're trying to solve. The parts of GGB where we've made the fastest progress and seen the best results have been coming from hyper specialization on a certain type of agency, a certain problem. There could be an original, the original vision of GGB could have been to use AI for all of healthcare. That's too big. It's hard to make traction there. Even AI for all of senior care, it's better. There are certain operational problems that present themselves in the home that we are better equipped to pursue at the current iteration of the company. Even within that, there are certain problems within home care software and IT that they are. There are lots of great companies operating in this space, and there will not be one company who becomes the only home care AI company in the world. That's not practically going to happen. So there will be specialization, there will be niches that people fill. So I'd say number one is understanding the benefits of specialization and really focusing on your customers. I would say number two, this applies certainly to every type of business you're starting, whether within a home care or not, is not becoming too wedded to the original vision of the company. I think you learn a lot every day from every customer you speak with, and what the market and your customers, potential customers, are the ultimate judges of what your offerings need to be. And you can sit in a room and you can build a tool for 6 months, but if that's not tested regularly with potential customers, you built something that nobody wants. Whereas one or two conversations with customers there just shows what is a true burning platform problem that needs to be solved. I think that's
Yeah,
a related point to number two is there are no shortage of problems you can solve. Some of these are nice to have. Others are real burning pain points that are preventing a home care
yeah.
agency from growing. And when you can unlock that bottleneck, show and measure the growth that your tools are offering, that's what really unlocks a lot of potential to grow that relationship
Yeah.
before earn the right to go after the next problem as well.
Yeah, so I want to kind of like crystallize this for other healthcare data consultants because I know there's quite a few of them, and I Andrew is approaching it from a business first problem and solution, right? Like, what's the outcome of that solution? And I think a mistake that I made, admittedly, is back to kind of what I was saying, identifying as a data engineer, and I stuck and held on to that original vision of the company that I had for so long, which is like I'm a data transformation, data strategy consultant. Well, that might have a really, really good resonance with a chief technology officer or someone that's more technical. But when you're talking to CEOs of companies that might not fit the profile for a company that needs data transformation services, you need to go back to what's a problem that you're actually solving for, and then, think about how you solve it. But that's not actually what you pitch. I got too hung up on the how, and it really and still it's like an identity shift for me. So like where you are, Andrew, as more of that business solutions process architect, dare I say, like that, because I see you as more like that. I think that's the identity shift that like I'm gradually starting to make now, but I've still been like so stuck in like, well, I was a data engineer for X amount of years and that's what I do, and I develop in Looker and Power BI, and that was the offer until I realized that for a lot of clients or prospects, that's just not enough. You need to really fall in love with their problems and understand their needs. And you've done that. And it's just really, really impressive to hear your depth of knowledge in home care. So I really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think it's true, but I would also say to your point, I had the same learnings you did in terms of how you identify and pitch yourself, your services to another customer. What I find to be tricky is, especially for enterprise might actually react better to say, I'm a data engineer or I am your
Yes.
visibility. So it's always about in
Yeah.
real time. It's sales 101 and there's
Yeah.
no right answer, but you know, football analogy, what's the defense throwing at you? You have to read the
Yeah.
situation. How am I going to approach this? And then just have both a plain language description to say what your tools do, but also be able to dive super deep into this data warehouse, these labels, these
Yeah.
endpoints, these permissions, everything like that.
Yep. Yeah, I think like enterprise and then scale ups that have a lot of data and rapid scale, they would need like a data transformation. And the CTO is typically the avatar that I found resonates with that pitch. But if you're going to try to pitch a data transformation and management service to a CEO of a, small sized e-commerce business, for example, they might look at you like, what the heck are you even talking about? What profit driving does that give me at all? So, I think you've got a really, really good handle and perspective on that. And I'm sure your consulting background like helped with that a ton too. I know we didn't talk a ton about your consulting background, just a little bit, but maybe that's a conversation just between the two of us some other time. But yeah, man. We're about at time, so I'm going to give you the floor. Like, where is it best for people to connect with you and find out more about GGB Healthcare?
The best place to connect with me would probably be LinkedIn, Andrew Bravo. You can find me. Also, the website GGB Healthcare, and an easy way to remember GGB is GGB. This gets back to one of the reasons I started. It's actually named after my grandparents who received excellent in-home care. So, great homage to them. And the GGB just stands for Grandma and Grandpa Bravo. So
Interesting.
GGB, grandmagrandpabravo.com or ggbhealthcare.com. And I enjoy having conversations with everyone in the home care space, whether you are leading an agency, whether you are looking to invest in an agency, whether you do scheduling. I'm always open to have these conversations. I have 15 conversations every week with different agencies, and it's always just energizing to hear different perspectives because this is another thing, at least in my sector, as every agency operates differently, they are all by far the experts on their individual operations. So there's just such fruitful conversations to pattern match across different agencies, and it's a great, very exciting and energizing to speak with people throughout the industry.
Incredible. Yeah, likewise, Andrew. No, this has been a great Friday afternoon. And ladies and gentlemen, this is episode 13 of the Healthcare Growth Cycle podcast featuring Andrew Bravo. And we will see you on the next episode. Thank you.